All right, we are live. Welcome to Reloader's Bench. Tonight we're going to be talking about powders. Um, with me, we have Ballistic Expansion and Ohio 45 ACP. If you want to join, please come and join us. We're going to be talking, first of all, with powders. We had different burn rates. The fastest one we're finding out there is Norma R1, and the slowest is a Vidibora 20N29. Basically, you know, with the burn rates, you want a faster one for shotgun and pistol, and the slower one you want for your Bayo rifles and Magnum rifles and stuff like that. Correct, guys?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I've only shot a lot. I mean, I shot a lot of pistol. I haven't shot a whole lot of rifle. I mean, I've done a little bit with it. And I mean, a lot of powders will work for light calibers, but that doesn't mean they're going to be like the ideal burn rate. So I mean, it's kind of that's kind of like the guessing game, and you kind of get to do some research and ask around, and Google is your friend kind of stuff, and figure out what people like for certain calibers. Because some calibers are pretty picky too.
Yeah, and a lot of shotgun and pistol powders do work for both, whereas you can get some really fast burning rifle powders to use in a long barrel like 357, stuff like that.
Right.
But
I
you
think
really don't want to
unique.
cross them.
What is it, like unique, or is it unique or tight? I think it's unique or tight group, one of the two, that you can use in 300 blackout.
Yeah, 300 blackout, that is a totally different one, because a lot of people will use a slower burning handgun powder instead of a rifle powder for 300 blackout, because you have such a large bullet.
It's like shooting a giant pistol cartridge.
Correct. Yeah, correct. A large bullet and a relatively small case for that bullet.
Yeah, it's just kind of a different animal, I guess. I'm never loaded.
Yes,
Don't own anything for it, so.
Yeah, and I would assume the same would be for your 50 Beowulf and stuff like that, the other really large bore AR platform rifles. But I do not have any experience in those. That's just a guess from me. So
You
I
have
guess
you have the burn rate chart up?
I can share that real quick.
I've got one right here. Pretty much what a burn rate chart is there's different people who release them. You can see one right now on my screen, and all they do is they rank the fastest burning powder as number 1, and they put the slowest at the end. So that kind of gives you an idea. You can kind of compare. So once you get one powder, that kind of sets the baseline. So like, for example, like I like Accurate Arms number 7 a lot. So if I can't get that for some reason, I'm like, okay, well maybe I can get something kind of close, so I can kind of get around in this area, from 44 to 53, and I can kind of get a range that's going to be somewhat similar in burn rate. You can't travel too far though, because like, for example, like Hodgin Longshot, that's pretty slow, but it still works fine in 40 caliber. Like you just go a few down, and Accurate number 9 is like for magnums. Like that's way too slow for 40 caliber.
Yeah, and long shot is a little too slow for 9mm as well.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Some people do use it, but they have to pack it full.
And that's just like what I was saying. How you can use it, but it's not going to be the ideal powder for what you want.
Right. For in a 40, you'll probably burn up all of the long shot. If you put that into a 9, you'll have powder spitting out the end of your barrel.
Right, and long shot's actually, because it's such a slow burn rate, it is a little bit. The slower the burn rate is, usually the hotter the better it burns when it's hot.
Mm-hmm.
So, because obviously it's going to take longer for the powder to burn. So, you're going to want to get it pretty hot so it'll burn quick. So it'll burn it all up.
Yeah, like some people I do shoot with, they do use long shot, but then they'll use a small rifle primer because it is hotter.
Mm-hmm.
And it'll go ahead and burn it all. So,
right.
And all powders They are, some are cleaner, some are dirtier. Some people like the dirtier stuff because they like the fouling in the barrel. Because they've done tests with their guns, and their gun performs a little bit better whenever they have a dirty barrel. So they go dirtier powders. My guns, my competition gun likes a cleaner barrel. I don't clean the barrel that much, but I use a fairly clean burning powder.
And what's good about from what burn rate? That's what pistol calibers are so versatile. Like literally 9, 40, and 45, you can literally go from pretty much Hodgson long shot. You can go all the way from there, and you can load all those. All of these powders will work. All these faster powders will work for those calibers. But obviously there's going to be different zones that are a little bit more tailored for each caliber that they like. But it'll be just as fine. Like if you're just loading ammo just to shoot, it's fine. You can use any of this powder pretty much. No, that's I will say some of these up here at the top are shotgun powders, and they're a little bit sensitive. So I mean, you kind of stay away from them. They're just really, I mean, probably red dot, probably the hottest I'd ever load, or fastest. I mean,
Correct.
For 9mm or anything like that.
Correct. I would stop there as well. And with burn rates, the faster the burn rate, the higher your pressure spike would be. So let's say a 9mm is 35,000 psi. As soon as you light that round, that powder with that red dot, it may spike to 35,000. Whereas that long shot, it may take a little bit, and your bullet may start to move before your pressure really gets up there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's the difference on burn rates.
So that's what I kind of look for as far as burn rate is that like we're talking about, and also too, like I said earlier, where once you get one, and if you find something you like that works okay, you can kind of build around it. It's like I like Accurate Arms No. 2 a lot, which makes sense because it's also right beside Vihori N320, which is also a very popular pistol powder. And so those, I've used that before for 9mm. I like it a lot for 9 and 40. And I've used those two. I've used No. 7 for 9mm before, and I actually like it a lot. But it's really high grainage because it's such a slow burning powder. It took like 6 point something grains for 9mm. It's crazy.
Yeah, I've loaded with High Stoker 800X, which is an IMR powder. I've loaded with SR 7260 something, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Can't remember what it is. And then I just got some Ramshot Silhouette that I'm going to end up loading, and that's going to be a fairly slower burning powder. But I mean, the reason I really like the performance out of the 800X, but the reason I didn't like it is whenever I went to my progressive press, it didn't meter well at all. So
right, and that's what we can kind of talk about too with the different geometric dimensions of powder.
Okay. Here, let me.
If you got some pictures, there's pretty much. I mean, how many types are there? There's 4 or 5.
I know there's stick, ball,
flake.
Right. A lot of shotgun powders are flake.
Yeah.
And we talking about powder dispensers and things like that. That's also another thing you kind of look for is like what if your powder measure likes. Like progressive powder measurers sometimes are kind of picky and they don't want to like flake powder. That's what they call bridging, is where like because the flake's so big it will literally bridge between the tube that the powder goes through, and it will catch in that tube, and it'll hold more flakes back, and it'll cause inconsistencies in the powder drop. So like for me, like I love like spherical powder is my favorite.
Yeah, for me, if I can get a spherical powder, I'm gonna get spherical powder.
Yeah, pretty much the finer the powder, like the sandier it is, the better it's gonna meter. Pretty much, it might be a little bit harder. Like your powder measure's got to be pretty rock solid though, because I know one person who actually sold me a pound of Accurate No. 7 because it was leaking out of his powder measure. So I was like, well, yeah, I'll take it. And I was like, well, leaking out of your powder measure. I was like, that's weird. But, it's because it's so fine, sandy.
All right, I'm screen sharing, and these are two different types of powder. The one on the right is a stick powder, and the one here on the left is a ball powder. As you can tell, that bridging, if you're going through a progressive press, sometimes these sticks will be sticking straight up as you're trying to dispense powder, and it can actually lock up your press because your powder measure is trying to cut one of these powders. And that is, you're just cruising along and all of a sudden, boom, your lock press is up. Your press locks up, and it kind of scares you at first if you don't know what's going on. But one good thing about the stick powder is it burns fairly consistent, and for a lot of your rifle, if you want to do like a bench rest or long-term precision stuff that you'll hand load, and each individual charge you're going to do by hand or have it weighed, this stick powder is really well. It's really good.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with how it burns and that. It's just how it meters and progressive.
Correct.
And so I don't have a whole lot of experience with that. We do have, some of the powder we use, IMR 4831. It's a stick powder, but we use it in a manual powder measure, and it's pretty accurate.
Yeah, and there's different types of stick powder. There's a real coarse stick powder, which this one is, and then there is something that looks like a squash cylinder. It's still stick powder, but it's a lot shorter. That meters better than the longer stuff because of that bridging.
Shortcut?
I think so, maybe.
Like a couple powders, like IMR did that, or they made literally two identical powders, and then they took the same powder and they cut it short because people were complaining about it, I guess, being so bad, getting caught up in presses. So they cut it short so you can fit more in a case, and it'll meter better.
Yep. So
that's about fitting in a case too. Is it's funny because you might take 5 grains of stick powder and you take 5 grains of spherical powder, and you could fill up. So let's take like a 9mm case for example. You could fill up a 9mm. You wouldn't use stick powder in a 9mm case, but you could fill a case up with stick powder with 5 grains, and then use the same amount, 5 grains, same weight, spherical powder, and it wouldn't even be over half of the case capacity.
Correct. Because
kind of important too, because if you want to be able to, work loads, you might not have enough case capacity.
Yep. Ball powder is a lot more dense than stick powder. And then, of course, the other one is a flake powder. And that doesn't show a very good one. Here. This is, of course, a ginormous flake, but basically it looks like a pancake.
Oh my gosh.
So yeah. So, of course, pancake bridging, stuff like that, and whenever you do it in a progressive, it doesn't meter well whenever you go by volume because it all depends on how these fall in there. If they all fall flat, you'll have a lot more grains in the same amount of space.
Right.
Than if you
were solids.
Right.
Yeah. I'm freaking Cheerios.
Yep. And on a progressive press, both of these are a flake powder. So, but there's just two different types.
Yeah, the one on the right is like a more standard flake, and that's about like what, like I guess like red dot, green dot would look like.
Yeah, a lot of your pistol Alliant powders are like that.
Right. Yeah, that's true. I got Alliant BE86, and it looks pretty much like that. It's small flake, but it's still a flake.
Yes.
And sometimes the smaller flake is okay. It meters pretty decent. Good enough that it's manageable. Mm-hmm. But it's still nothing compared to like the spherical.
Yeah, and as you can see, Unique 700X and 800X, they're all the flake powder, but you can see they are different sizes. So your Unique is smaller, 700X in the middle, and then I had this 800X that was fine if I weighed each one out, but as soon as I started putting it through a progressive, it didn't meter well at all. And I was getting some that had 2 grains, and the next one it would throw 6 grains. And I just got scared because I didn't want to have 2 grain where the bullet doesn't leave, but has enough pressure to cycle and put another one down. So.
And another thing too about powder is they have they call single base and double base, which means that double base will be they'll have 2 different geometric shapes in there of the powder. I'm not really sure why they do that. I guess maybe to keep it as part of the mixing and maybe it helps it meter better. I'm not sure why they do it. Maybe it's something to do with how it burns. But pretty much you can look at it and you'll see, Foose is bringing up pictures now, like it'll look like 2 different shapes. It's usually in the spherical powder, you'll see it. It'll be like really, really small spheres, and then you have like kind of flattened spherical flakes.
Yeah, I'm trying to.
It's kind of hard to see, like, until you see it in person is the best way to see it.
Yeah.
And, like, even you have to like look at it pretty close with just your eye just to see it, because it's really fine.
Let's see what this is. No, that's not. Sorry, I'm jumping around here. I totally forgot about the double based. Let's see. No, you can kind of see it right here. See how big this flake is, and the flake right next to it, how small it is? That's a double base. So.
I found a picture. Hang on.
Okay.
Is that a blended powder, or are they just 2 different shapes of the same kind of powder?
Double base, I think, is 2 different of the same.
You're right.
2 different shapes of the same. So.
I said I found a picture. That wasn't what I wanted. Where'd it go? Where'd it go? I guess that was it. It's really hard to see, even with a naked eye. Like when you're just looking at first glance, you won't even know it. And
Correct.
for a while, I didn't know that. Like I never even paid attention. And I got looking. I'm like, why are there 2 different shapes? And I'm like, oh, it's double base. I'm like, that's what that means. Kind of on my own. I was like, oh, duh.
And a lot of times, you go in there and you buy it, and before I buy something, because I know I want to stay away from stick, and I know I want to stay away from flake. So what I do is I'll be like, okay, I'll go to Google Images and type in the name, and a lot of times someone will take a picture of whatever that powder looks like. I'm like, okay, that looks like it's
sometimes the manufacturers will tell you.
Mm-hmm. Yes, they do.
So I think this is a double base, because you can kind of see where or maybe it's all the same. Maybe it's just the way that he poured it. It's hard to tell. Like I said, this is what accurate looks like. Accurate powder. It's extremely fine.
Yes.
And that's awesome. So here's another picture. That one's kind of hard to tell.
I'm gonna go to the next one right next to it.
Oh, that's a good one for double base. Look at that. You can definitely tell the stick powder. See how it's different colors? Wow, that's really obvious. Apparently double base, I guess it would be more apparent in the double base stick powder because of how big everything is.
Yeah, true.
So you see how these pieces right here are all gray and those are kind of darker in the middle. Those are the 2 different bases. So here's the kind of different flakes and stuff they have. So this will all be considered flake. I think this is extruded flake or something. They call it. There's a fancy name for it.
Yeah, well, whenever you start getting to a real small flake, they'll also call it a flattened ball.
Right, flat and spherical or something.
Yes, flat and spherical. And we start talking about the different pros and cons of each. Whenever you get into a progressive press, you want something that meters really well because you still want your accuracy, and you're not weighing it out. You're going by volume, so you want a nice fine powder so it'll be as consistent as possible. If you're doing it by hand or like a Loadmaster or something like that, it's really not going to matter because you're going to go by weight.
Right. Now, I don't know what all powder measures have you guys used?
I've used a Lee disc, and then I have my Hornady, and of course I've done it from Trickler on a scale as well.
Right. What about you, Ohio?
I've got a Hornaday automatic for the progressive, and then I've got a GEMS digital scale for the hand loading.
A gem? A digital scale that you put into the tray.
Yeah, trickle it out then.
So whenever you do whenever you trickle out, do you just always trickle it out and then see what's on the scale, or do you trickle it out to where it's like, let's say you're going for 10 grains or something? Do you get 10 grains and then you pick it up and let it zero it out and put it back down, or how do you do that? How do you?
We usually just zero out the crucible,
Okay.
and then actually have another powder drop that we get close, and then we do a secondary trickle to get it to the final grain weight.
All
All
right.
right, that's kind of the way the RCBS and who else? I think Hornady both make that the automatic charge. One of them calls it the Charge Master. I think it's RCBS, the one that like works like on the laser or whatever or something, and then you can set it digitally how many grains, and it'll put out that exact many. It'll automatically trickle it.
Yeah,
That's
but
pretty sweet, but they're kind of pricey, but
yeah, they're a couple hundred, and you always do want to take and check it on another scale just to make sure.
well, I think some of them have a scale like at where it pours out into is a scale.
Yes, they do.
So
I was talking to some precision loaders, and one of the things that they were telling me is that you don't trickle it into the crucible on the digital scale. Sometimes,
right.
do it off scale and then put it back on and let it.
That's what I do too.
Yeah, during our last reloading chat, that was my mistake. I went ahead and did it, and whenever a buddy of mine shot, I had some that were way off. Like some would be like 900 feet per second, and the next one would be like 500 feet per second. And it was because I did that on the scale, and I bet you I wasn't accurate with my grains.
Yeah, and that's what I do. Like I'll put it in the, I guess that's what the technical name is, crucible, but I just call it the little powder tray, and I'll just put it in there, and then I'll put it on the scale. And sometimes I'll weigh it twice. Like I'll take it off after I put it in the crucible, after I put the powder in there, I'll put it on the scale, let it sit for a few seconds. Because sometimes it'll change. Sometimes it'll sit there like at 5, say like mine, I was loading like 5.9. It might sit there like at 5.9 for like maybe 2 seconds or even 3 seconds, and then all of a sudden it'll switch to 6.
Yep.
Because it kind of takes a second for it to register. And I will say, if you have a fan blowing on it, it'll affect it too.
Yes, it does, and you'll have it on there. And it's
I have a small desk fan that's like 3 feet away, maybe 2.5 feet away from where I had my scale out the other day. And I was like, I flipped it on, and I'd already weighed the charge, and I had it still sitting there. And I looked at the scale, and I'm like, whoa, why did it go down? And I moved the fan. I was like, oh, that's why. It was just the wind was affecting it.
Yeah, I've got to turn the scale on and almost let it warm up for a little while and stabilize, because it'll start drifting from 0, and then I have to recalibrate it, and then the scale's dead on for the rest of the night.
Right, I usually recalibrate mine like every time I get ready to make a new load. Like if I'm working on something, like I'm setting my press, I'll recalibrate it. Which is I have the Hornady. Oh gosh, I forget the name of it. It's their little digital one. It's
the same one I have, and they usually come with 100-gram
yep, exactly what I have.
weight. And that it's a known standard weight, so you could take and zero it out, put that on there, and it should come out to be 100 if it's calibrated right.
Yeah, Hornady GS 1500.
I think that's exactly what I have.
That's what they call it. So it'll weigh up to 1,500 grains, which is a pretty decent amount.
Yes, it is.
No,
does your scale resolve to the 10th of a grain, or does it go out one more decimal place?
it just goes to the 10th. I wish it would go out one more.
Yeah, the GEM goes out one more decimal place on that.
What's it called?
A GEM, GEM 2500, I think it is.
Yeah, I think I looked at getting that one on Amazon.
It's either 250 or 2,500. I don't remember the number.
I'll probably have to. I might invest in one eventually because it's like a jewelry scale, right?
Exactly. It does carat weights. It's got all the conversions on there.
Yes. The Hornady one has the weights too, but all the different units. That's what I meant to say. It has carats, grains, grams, and ounces, I think. But just having the extra decimal place, yeah.
So yeah, I kind of thought about that too.
It only does it in like a half of a tenth, though. It doesn't give you, 0.15, 0.16. It's either 0.15 or 2. In other words, it only jumps by half of a tenth.
But still, that's a lot more accurate than just a 0.15. You don't know where you're at.
Yep, up or down, right.
That's awesome. I'd like to get something like that. And it's is it battery powered?
It runs on batteries, or they include a DC power supply that you can plug in as well.
That is awesome. I was about to say that'd be sweet because I'd like to have that for mine too because I'm just waiting for the battery to die on it.
Yeah, out in the chat, someone said that they used to work with accurate scales and they would have glass doors on around them so wind doesn't affect it. That's something you could always do. Thanks,
our precision scales are all inside of a glass enclosure. That's correct. And temperature controlled.
Nice. So now we're talking about powder dispensers. What I've used so far is the what I started out on was the RCBS. I guess they call it the Uniflow now. They may have changed it a little bit, but it looks like it's the same basic design. And actually, it worked pretty good for stick powder, and it screws right into the top of a press. It has the same threads on it as a standard die does, so it'll screw into any standard press. And the way it works is you can see this little. Let me zoom in here. There we go. So you can see that this is the actuating lever. So you raise the case up into the body there, then you turn this little lever. It has this little wheel in here, has a cutout in it. And depending on how you have this nut adjusted, right here, will adjust how much powder will let in there, and it's all marked with numbers on the nut and on this threaded piece here. And it's really accurate, and I like it. It's nice, but it's just really slow. So I mean, once you get it set, you don't want to change it. And I actually used it for a while for my competition stuff, and it worked fine. And then I switched from it to a Lee Autodisc, and it did not work good at all for flake powder. Like, it worked okay for like ball powder, but like it was really off for flake powder.
Yeah, whenever I started off with mine, I really didn't care about speed of my projectiles, so I just made it so it was kind of accurate. And then once I went and switched my lock and load, I was like, oh, I wonder how fast these other ones are moving. And I was having, anywhere between 75 to 100 foot
Oh yeah, definitely.
Speed difference just because powder was different.
At some of my early matches when I was using the Lee Autodisc, one of the guys I was shooting with, he's like, what press you loading on or something like that? And he's like, I can tell the difference in the powder when you're shooting some of them are louder.
Yeah, definitely. You can definitely tell.
And then eventually I got the Dillon, and Dillon makes a pretty good powder measure. It's not obviously it's not the most accurate because it's still gonna have the way it works is it has like a sliding bar that slides, has an adjustment screw, and that bar has a cutout in it, and that screw adjusts how big that cutout is. And that bar, what happens is that cutout, whenever it's not actuated, it's sitting out from underneath where the powder drops. So when you actuate it, the powder bar goes past the hole of where the powder is. It drops down in that hole, drops it down into the case, and it keeps going. And then it comes back across. So it's pretty accurate. I mean, there's still a little bit of loose space in there that can cause it to get blocked up and stuff. They actually make a couple of shims and stuff for them for to take up the extra space that's in there. But I like it so far. It's pretty nice. And it's case activated, which means that the case goes up and it pushes on a powder bell die, and that activates the powder measure.
Yeah, the one I use is right here is lock and load. Also, it's case activated. So as your case comes up here, it pushes this entire ram up, and your powder always sits down here, and then this is your actual your powder measure right here.
Right, and it looks like that one looks like exactly the way the RCBS one works.
Mm-hmm.
You got the same kind of wheel. It's just automatic.
Yes, exactly. And
the only problem I have with that Hornady is those thumb screws on the linkages keep coming loose.
Agreed.
Yeah, that is one good thing. I'll pull up a picture of the Dillon one.
Yeah, well, I put a little bit of Loctite on these two, and
the one down at the bottom, yeah.
These three, because you need that spring to come off, and this one you need to come off whenever you swap powders. And then one good thing about this is you keep this internal cam right there, and you just swap out this piece right here if you want to switch grains. Like I load for several different pistols, so I'll go ahead and just swap that out, and I don't have to mess with it, and I know that, just check it, and then I know it's good.
This is perfect. This is what I was talking about with the powder bar for Dillon. See, this little space here is where the powder goes, and then this little screw right here moves this little piece. It slides back and forth. So that will slide underneath the powder measure, and that catches the powder, and then it drops it down through the die into the case as it slides across.
Yeah.
Nice.
With the Lee, they have an enhancement kit for their auto disc that is basically just like that.
I'm trying to get this picture to pull up. Oh, there we go. So you see this guy right here? It's a pretty good picture. So this is like for you had the linkage with the screws. With the Dillon, it's a bar, and it latches onto the press down at the bottom of the press, and it's spring loaded. So when you push the ram forward or the handle forward, it pulls this rod down and it forces this bar all the way back, make sure that it resets completely. And you see this little linkage, it just pulls it back, and then whenever it goes up, the powder bar will go this way, and it'll dump the powder in the case. I may have been wrong about where it's. I think it may have already be sitting over the powder when it's not being used. I think like right now where the position it's in, I think the slot is underneath the powder right now, and then it goes forward and drops it in through here.
Yeah, that seems logical. So it'll make sure it fills up and packs in.
Right, and that's what I was talking about. Where there are some, like you see this gap right here, or that shadow.
Yeah.
Sometimes powder can get in there, and it can kind of mess it up if you're using it, depending on what kind of powder you're using. So I think there's a few shims you can get for different powder for your powder bars. There are two of these. There's one that's made for larger charge weights and one that's made for smaller.
Yeah, and of course that is something that you have to look at. Is you're going to put like 5 grains right around for pistol, whereas for your larger ones you can do 20, 30, 40, 50 grains of whatever powder. So, of course, you can use the same body and stuff, but the actual measuring unit will be a lot bigger for your rifle.
Right, yeah, I haven't even used my large powder bar yet because I haven't done any rifle in my progressive press.
Yeah, I've done some for my 223s. So we've gone through burn rates, positives and negatives of all of your kinds of powders and powder dispensing. Can you guys think of anything else? Talk about powders?
I mean, there's a few other ways to measure it, but
just follow the books.
Yeah.
Don't start wildcatting out there.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Stick to the data.
Yes, stick to the data.
You're looking at huge pressures, and it's important to be accurate.
Yeah, I mean, you're thinking about it, a 9mm is 35,000 pounds per square inch right in front of your hand, and that's fairly low. I know 40s are a high pressure. I'm not exactly sure what their pressure range is, but then you get into some of these rifles, and you're like 55, 60,000 psi. So it's a lot of pressure right next to your hand or face in rifles.
Yeah, most pistol stuff's pretty mild compared to rifle. But rifles, the good thing is them too. If you screw up pretty bad, usually like a bolt action, it'll handle it. It might break the gun or something, but it's not gonna. I mean, they're pretty rock solid. Whereas like a freaking pistol, that slide doesn't weigh very much, and it's the only thing that's holding it in there is a spring. The only thing that's holding that slide in place is a spring and the barrel lock up. And if once that linkage is broken, once the recoil starts, it's going back, and if it's got enough force to break that spring, it's gonna keep going back.
And you have other mechanical stuff, and pins and stuff going through, so it is more than just a spring, but you can really hurt your gun and everything. And like
Not on the lock.
Oh, true.
The only thing stopping it would be the trigger bar.
Right.
Well, I don't think it'd even stop it because it'd be underneath the barrel. I mean, the barrel might catch it.
Right.
It would definitely be pretty catastrophic if you had a really hot load inside of a gun like that.
True. I didn't think about that. I was thinking more of a CZ. But, and then, like you said, in a bolt action, a lot of them will have a hole drilled through to go ahead and vent some pressure if you get really high. I know, Remington 700 and stuff like that have an extra hole.
Right around a lot of bolt action rifles have that right around the face of the breech face.
Yep.
There's like 2 little holes cut in there, just like relief cuts.
Yeah, they're blowout plugs. I know
Right.
they've got them on the 50 BMGs, so that if you have a case separation, you don't have all that gas coming down the bolt right into your face.
Right.
And then, of course,
pistols, you don't really have that. It's just kind of like the gun blows open and the gas goes everywhere. That's why the magazine gets blown out of the gun sometimes.
that's where springs and grips and stuff like that get blown out. And then in semi-auto guns, if that bullet passes that gas tube and you're still real high pressure, yeah, that action's going to be moving pretty darn fast. And, in a AR style, you're going to get an excessive amount of gas coming back to you.
Yeah, so that goes back to stick to the data. And like we said, like I was saying, I mean, you don't have to be real when you're buying like from 9mm like that. If you're just buying powder so you can reload just to shoot, you don't have to be like extremely picky, which is good. That's what's great. Like years and years ago, people didn't have that option. It was like there's only a few powder companies out there. Now there are a dime a dozen. And like we said, some of them might work really, really well, and some of them might not be the best, but as long as it's safe, I mean, you can reload with it and you can shoot it. So don't be afraid to try new powders. Like I like reloading, so I like to work up new loads. So anytime I see something new that I want to try, it's kind of exciting. That way I have data for it from then on out when I know to buy it anymore, because it's kind of a big investment. Powder, usually if you order them online, you won't order a good bit to make it worth the shipping. So it's kind of nice to buy local too, just buy a pound or two to try when you see it and see what you think before committing. And it's also a good way to find powders, like especially during the shortages and stuff. I noticed like people are picky and they don't want to change, so they're like, oh, I'm only gonna buy Winchester 231 or whatever. But there's plenty of other good powders out there that aren't as well known because no one wants to take the time to work up a load for them. That's the only reason, and you can buy them when it's available and have powder instead of not having any powder at all.
Well, isn't the Hodgdon HP 38 the equivalent powder, I think, too? If you can't get 231?
Yep.
I think they're identical.
I think so.
Yeah, it is. I was looking at the burn right now. They're right beside each other. So, yeah. Even the Vorian 320 is pretty close. So, like I said, like that range out there is actually pretty tight, like burn rate. Like as far as it's not as spread out as you think for the faster powders. Only until you get to a certain point, like we were saying, you start getting into like the 40 caliber powders, and stuff like that are like accurate arms number 7 and long shot and blue dot stuff like that. That's for like 40 and 38 super, things like
Yeah,
that.
and whenever it gets to the faster powder, the difference between a 1 and a 10 may be minuscule, but in a rifle, if you get between 130 and 140, the difference of burn rate will be a lot greater on the slower burning powders than on the faster burning powders.
Right.
So, and a lot of your slower burning powders are for your 338s, your big magnums, your 50 BMG, stuff like that have 26 or longer barrel, because it has all that volume that it needs to fill up. And slower burning powder usually produces more gas, which everyone knows the gas is what actually pushes all the powder, pushes around down the barrel.
Yep, it's a chemical reaction. So, anything else you want to?
The only thing else that I could see is the slower the powder for like a pistol, the hotter your primer needs to be. So a real fast burning one, you could go with a regular primer. But if you want to go into Magnum or a really slower, like that one that B was talking about earlier, you want a hotter primer. That's why some people either go to a Magnum primer or go to a small rifle primer, because rifle primers are hotter because they're meant for a slower burning powder than a pistol primer. So.
Sorry.
That's all right.
Something. But I mean, yeah, pretty much that's it. Just also, I mean, I guess we talk about where to buy it real fast. I mean, you can find it, like I said, local places. I would never pay personally. I would never pay more than $30 for a pound of powder, and I've paid $30 a pound, and I'm okay with it, but I wouldn't pay more than that.
If it's a local, I'd probably go 35, just because you don't have the hazmat and you don't know. I mean, it's still better.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it depends on how desperate you are.
Right, and let's say you're wanting to get into reloading, and you have 10 different calibers, 10 different rifle calibers. Go out to Powder Valley or Winders or Natchez or something like that, and buy 8 or 10 different powders and get them all in, and then start experimenting.
Yeah, powdervalley.com is where I is like the best place I found. Wideners, Reloading. Don't use Midway USA. Right now they don't have hardly any powder in stock. I mean, I'm not gonna say don't use them. I mean, they're good company, but their prices are usually generally a little bit higher. I mean, check them out for sure.
That and with Midway USA, they'll ship 1 box at a time. So let's say, like, I recently bought 20 pounds of pistol powder. Well, that came in 2 10-pound boxes. If I would have bought that with Midway, even let's say the price per pound was the same, Midway would have charged me 2 hazmat fees, whereas Powder Valley put those 2 10-pound boxes into a single box and only had 1 hazmat fee.
Yeah, and
little stuff like that.
I don't know if Midway will ship primers with powder, but I know Powder Valley does. Like, I just ordered some primers and powder, and it's all in one package.
Yep. I know that Midway does not, because I ordered some primers. Well, I know 2 boxes of primers from them. Count to be 10,000 primers, and it was 2 different hazmat fees. This is a while back. So where do you usually get your powder and primers from, stuff like that?
Yeah, I usually I support my local guys for the powder. I avoid the hazmat fees, and they give me some help with reloading advice, and I pretty much go to Fin, Fur, and Feather for that stuff.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, definitely especially when you're
true.
getting
You
into
got that option for sure.
definitely.
And they really stock. I mean, they've got all the powders in there. They've got everything but Rotumbo right now, it seems like, which is what I'm looking for.
Yeah. Yeah, like for me around here, there's a couple places that have it, but one place, the Ace Hardware here, they're like, okay, we have this and this, and that's all we stock. They only stock like 2 or 3 different powders.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other one, they'll stock a bunch of rifle powders, but they're like, well, we use all the pistol powder ourselves, so we're not going to stock it.
Huh? Wow.
Yeah. I mean, it's...
Yeah, and see, I have 3 gun stores there within 30 minutes of me, but only one of them really stocks powder really well. I mean, 2 of them they have like a little small, like maybe 4-foot section shelf. They'll carry primers and powder, and actually one of them actually carries good bidding primers, and they'll have good prices. And I'll check there for primers. And then the other one though, they have a pretty good size. They have like 2 little small aisles. The aisles are probably both 12 feet long, and there's 2 of them, and they're both full of powders. And so that's where I usually go. Like if I want to, like I was saying earlier, if you want to just pick up a pound or something, there's no point. You can't try stuff if you order it online. There's no point in paying a hazmat fee for 1 pound or 2 pounds of powder.
Yeah.
So that's I'll go buy it. So if I'm in there like for something else and I see something I want to try, yeah, I'll go ahead and buy it. Or if I see a good deal.
Our local gun store, he doesn't sell on the internet at all, so he's always got stock, which is a real
awesome.
benefit for the local people.
Right, like ours, he always has rifle powder, and actually, I will go to his shop to buy rifle powder because I don't shoot a lot of rifles, so that I'm not going to order like 8 pounds of rifle powder online. And so I'll go there and I'll look and see what he has, and that's usually where I get rifle powder from. It's just because the way pistol powder's been so slim, slim stock, limited stock past years, and so it's been kind of hard to find. So I just order in bulk when I can, but it's getting better. But
it is getting better.
With the elections coming up and stuff, I wouldn't be surprised for it taking another downturn. So stock up while you can.
And our guy carries like the Winchester primers. He's got CCI. He's got Federal. He's got all the Magnums. He's got the 5.56 and the 7.62 hard primers. For the ARs.
Yeah.
And he puts those on sale. Gets people coming in there all the time.
Yeah, that's the only thing I do. I will notice like powder isn't as big of a price jump, but primers it's crazy. Like I can get CCI primers for like $26 online, plus the hazmat, so maybe it comes out to $27, $28. But I've seen multiple times 1,000 primers for $40, which to me that's just too much.
Now they're $29 day in, day out, and he puts them on sale for maybe $26.
Yeah, that's not bad at all. I would pay
$29.
I would pay $29 without hazmat all day.
Mm-hmm.
See, and that's pretty awesome.
And one thing about powders, let's say you have a pistol powder and you start you load up 100 rounds. You can still get rid of that. You may not, of course, you won't get all of your money back, but you may be able to knock a couple bucks off and still get rid of it on a Facebook forum or something like that. So just because you buy the powder doesn't mean you're stuck with that.
Now, I'll say about not just necessarily selling though. Talking about using powder and then buying it. Like, be careful of buying powder for somebody like that. Like, I would only do it with someone I trusted.
That's true.
Like, or at least knew, like, they were a safe reloader and stuff, and or pretty diligent, that kind of stuff, because you don't want mixed powder. That's very bad.
Yeah, you want to get a
That's
bucket
very
of floor sweepings.
That's very true. You also take, and if you have friends or stuff that reload, ask them if you can borrow some of it, and they'll probably just here's some, or if they have or if they have a quarter of a pound left or something, they may just say, here, take it, experiment.
Right.
I mean, that's one good thing with reloaders and shooters.
Definitely, especially with pistol powder, it goes a lot farther.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, you're talking. If you use 5 grains, which is about the standard for a pistol, that's 1,400 rounds per pound of powder. So whoopie-doo if you have a little bit going. No big deal.
Right. It's you can get 1,300 to 1,500 rounds per pound of powder for pistol. Usually, for
Yep.
the smaller pistol cartridges. You start getting the bigger stuff though. It's like you're lucky to get 1,000 for rifle and stuff like that.
Oh, so a rifle.
Sometimes it's only a couple hundred.
Yeah, for my 308, the way I want to load it, I'm only going to get like 150 per pound. So.
Really?
Yeah.
150 bullets per pound of powder?
I think no, that can't be right.
Now, we'll say when we loaded like I bet Ohio can, since he's loading 300 Lapua, or 338 Lapua, I bet he can say how.
Well, no, that's about right. That's 46 grains per 308. That's not that far off.
Yeah, it is 152. You're right. So yeah, it's a lot less economical. Of course, then again, you're not shoot. Most people don't shoot big bore rifles that much.
And that's one reason why. Not only because your projectiles are twice as expensive, but the price of your powder's up quite a bit.
Plus, it's just a lot harder to find places to shoot them and really have fun, like really push the limits. There's only so much you can do with a long-range bolt-action rifle.
Or even a gas gun, or even an AR or whatever. I mean, a lot of places, especially around here, I could go out to a 230 yard, but that's a half an hour away. Whereas if I want to go like 10 minutes away, I go and I'll shoot in a pistol bay with my rifle.
Right. So I was doing the math for our powder for our 300. We load some 300 Remington Ultramag, which is pretty similar in case capacity to the 338, and it for what the grainage we're loading at right now, we can get 88 rounds for a pound of powder. So that gives you an idea.
And Ohio, do you reload your 50 BMG at all?
No, I don't have a 50. I just got some rounds. I don't have one.
Oh, okay. Because you start getting into that, and you may only have 50, maybe even less than that per pound of powder.
Oh yeah, it's crazy.
Or maybe 20 or something like that. I mean, it's not that much.
50 BMG is a whole nother game. Then you gotta have a whole another press and specialty dies, and it's not cheap. But
All right. You guys have anything else you want to talk about? Powder or powder measures or anything like that?
not really.
I don't use the little scoops.
Yeah, I'll put it this way: don't use the scoops. Scoops, I would buy some and put them in a bug out bag.
Well, the only time I do use the Lee scoops is whenever I do it by hand. I'll use one of those to get semi-close to it.
Just like you transport the powder and then like trickle it. Yeah, that is true.
Yes, that's the only time I use it.
I guess that would be good, like if you want to work up a load, like for like a rifle or whatever. You only wanted to make like 5 rounds or something, and you already had the gun set in, and you were just wanting to see how the round hit. You could just do that instead of adjusting your powder measure just for 5 rounds. It's like I was saying earlier, like that RCBS powder measure I have, it's not really easy to adjust.
Yep.
I mean, it takes 2 seconds. I mean, it takes a little bit to adjust it just the way you want it.
Right, and weighing it out is always going to be more accurate than volume every time. But
no, I will say though, I mean the scoops do work. Like you can load them, and you can be somewhat consistent. You got to be careful. You got to do it. The way I would do it is just make sure that you're scooping the same way every time, and that's all that matters. And so I mean, like I said, it'd be like a last resort thing. Like I said, it'd be good to have. It's good to have for emergencies, like if you ever need to reload, like for like a bug out situation or whatever, or if like something really really bad happened to your press and you had to load like for a match the next day.
That is true, but I know a lot of reloaders, especially for pistol stuff, they're not going by the skin of their teeth. They usually have couple hundred, couple thousand already loaded. So it's
Right.
nothing like, oh, I'm waking up at 8 o'clock and I have a match at in 3 hours. I need to go load ammo. That happens.
I know people who do that a lot.
I mean, it happens, but yeah, you really don't want to be in that case because that's when mistakes start happening because you are rushed.
Right. Yeah, I usually load mine, like my match ammo, like I'll load it the week of, but at the latest, it'll be the day before, if that. Usually it's a little earlier in the week if I can.
Yeah, and with me, I go by volume at a time. Like whenever I go out there, I'll usually do 1,000 or something like that at a time, and just be done with it. So.
Yep. Anyways, that's pretty much all I have to add. Thanks
Yeah.
for having me chat, hosting.
Yeah,
Appreciate
not a problem. Ohio, do you have anything you want to add?
No, I appreciate the invite. First time on a chat.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Join us some more. You've been around a while in the external.
Yeah, always just kind of lurking around out there, but figured start it up now.
Yeah, good deal. I know you will be welcome. All right, with that, I'm not sure if we'll be doing this every week, but we're going to try to do it, a while, and we'll just keep on going, different topic every week.
Yeah, and anybody who's interested in joining and asking questions, we can do that too.
Definitely.
Yeah. So just get in touch with one of us, with me or Foose or somebody who's on gun channels a lot, and we'll get it set up.
Yep. And you will know who the reloaders are because we do talk about it quite a bit on any chat out there. So you'll figure out who the reloaders are.
Oh yeah.
All right.
Real quick. All right.
So
Thanks for tuning in, guys.
all right. You guys have a good evening.